Alright, here we are in Photoshop. Of course, you might have a different editing software, but it should play out similarly as what I'm going to do in this video. I have a 1280 by 720 pixel canvas open right here. To create a canvas, all you have to do, File, New, and then you type in your pixels right here. But make sure pixels is selected. Sometimes by default, inches is selected and things will get a little weird then. So pixels, like I said, 1280 by 720. If you want, you can always change it to 1920 by 1080 if you want to, but I'm going to be doing 1280 by 720. I just have a blank canvas here. This is going to be the canvas for the thumbnail that we're going to be making, and I already have some assets that I just pretty much saved from Google. Google image search, I searched for red arrow, red circle, and also Bigfoot, which is going to be the subject matter of this thumbnail. So starting off, we're going to load up the Bigfoot image here. It's pretty grainy and old, but it's not going to matter for what we're going to do. I'm going to make sure that it is rasterized, that way I can edit it. Typically, my favorite tool in Photoshop is the old Control-T to transform the image, and then once that happens, you have the little squares at the end, which means you can adjust the size. If you hold Shift, you can get a perfect selection. That way it doesn't mess up the resolution too much. I'm gonna scroll it up. I'm gonna make it pretty big, that way I can just hit enter and then grab my drag tool and drag it down to the right side of the thumbnail, because the left side is going to be where the text is going to be, and we'll move from here. Of course, you can switch it up if you want. You can move the subject matter to the left side. It really doesn't matter too much. The only thing is the length of the video, the little timestamp for the video is going to be in the bottom right, so you kind of want to avoid putting important things there, because the video timestamp will actually get in the way. So here we are. We made our Bigfoot picture, aligned it to the right, and now we're going to bring in the arrow and our circle. Just like before though, all we have to do is do Control-T, and we actually have to make sure that the circle is above the subject matter, and we have to make sure it's rasterized, of course, that way we can edit it. And we noticed that the circle has some white funniness to it. One way I like to kind of solve that is just to add a color overlay to the arrow. Sometimes the images we pull from Google aren't going to be perfectly transparent. There's going to be some funny stuff to it. So we're just going to go into the properties here and make sure that there's a color overlay under the layer styles, and you can change this to whatever color you want. Actually, if you don't really want to deal with red, you can change it to a different color, but I'm gonna make sure it's red, switch it from color to normal, that way all the white is kind of covered up by the red, and then hit OK. Now once we do that, we can do Control-T again. This time, since it's a different selection than I actually want for Bigfoot, I'm not going to hold Shift to get the perfect selection. I'm just going to drag it down and try to make it kind of match a Bigfoot here. Of course, you don't want to make it too big, because it might have trouble fitting over what you're trying to highlight. Get it just right. Kind of an awkward circle, but we'll make it work. Then we grab the red arrow, drag it over to the left, Control-T again, Shift. We're gonna want this one to be a perfect, that way we don't mess up the resolution on it. And then just hit enter and drag the arrow, Control-T, hold, and then we want to go to the corner and just rotate it a little bit. Actually, we're actually gonna rotate it this way. Enter, and then just drag it down here. That way we can put the font on the left side. Then we grab the font tool, horizontal type tool. Go ahead and make a selection, and we're just gonna say Bigfoot found. So I have pretty big text here. I'm gonna want to shrink it a little bit. There we go. Actually, we need to make it bigger. I don't know why it took so long there. So we'll go like 400. And just to move this to make it fit, 400 is too big, so 250. Doesn't look right. We might have to mess with that. See, it's set at 60. Base is going to be 0. It must have been set from when I messed with it earlier. I typed big twice. Oops. All right. You shouldn't have those issues. If you're running your own settings, you might, but typically it's set at 0, like I had to switch it to. And you do that by going up here, clicking on this, the character panel. All right, so I don't really like this font, so I'm gonna switch up the font. Typically you want a big bulky font, that way it sticks out more. Scroll up a little. One of the big fonts that a lot of people like to use is called Impact, so let's go with Impact. And I don't really like the gaps between the fonts, so I'm gonna open up my character panel again and go over here to where it says auto. 14 is too small, 72 is too small, so let's go like 150 here. No, more. 250? No, too much. 225. 200. 205. There we go. Bigfoot found. Just how I wanted it. Alright, so then we're gonna go ahead and open this up again. Go to our layer styles. Go for a color overlay. And I like to go with like an orangish yellow. Kind of like that. That looks good. And to make this kind of stick out more, we can go with a drop shadow. Click on drop shadow, go to distance, make it 0. And it kind of makes it stick out a little bit more. And then we can go to stroke to add a border to it. Go with like a black border. We want to. You can mess with the size of the border to however you want. Make it bigger, make it smaller. There we go. And we're gonna zoom out a little bit and take a peek at our thumbnail. I notice the arrow is kind of it's hidden by the font, so maybe we can drag the arrow above the font. Kind of distracting. I might just move the arrow. Gonna move the arrow, Control T again to rotate it. Make it kind of stick off the page, I think. Do that. We can go to layer, and then we can duplicate the layer and move it up here, rotate it again, and just like that. There we go. So now that we move the arrow, we can actually adjust the font size again, and one way to do that, of course, is to Control T, hold Shift to make sure everything expands evenly. Once we get it to the size we want, press enter, and it's kind of hanging off the page, so we're going to bump it up a little bit with our move tool. You can use the arrow keys on that, or you can just move your arrow or your cursor and just drag it, but there we go. And we zoom out, take a peek at what it looks like from a distance, and that looks pretty good. If we really wanted to, we could just grab our text tool again, and we can change the font up. Try to find something that is a little less bulky if we wanted to. And you can, of course, install your own fonts. There's tons of sites out there. One of the ones I use a lot is called DaFont. But I think we're going to stick with Impact because it looks the best. And then if we want to go ahead and add a border to this, I typically just right click. I go to Merge Visible, Control A, Control C, Control V. This copy and paste the background image into a layer of its own. Then we can just delete the background image, double click on the image that we made, hit on stroke, make sure it's on inside, and then we can select whatever color we want. If we want it red, if we want it yellow, we can do that as well. Yellow might be the key here. Adjust the size of it. Actually kind of blending in with the font, so maybe I'll do like an orange. Orange would look good. Or red. anything that's vibrant, that sticks out. The main point, of course, is just to gather attention from people who are watching the video. So there we are. Very simple, straightforward thumbnail. Doesn't really take much work. All it took was a few Google searches to get the arrow and the circle, and of course the subject matter on this thumbnail, which was Bigfoot. You'll probably have your own image for your own thumbnail, and you can do something similar like this. It doesn't take long, just takes practice. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Talk to you guys in a bit.